I woke to the smell of coffee and the weight of what I'd done pressing against my chest like a stone. David moved around our kitchen, humming something off-key while he prepared breakfast. The sound made my stomach turn. The previous evening felt like a fever dream. 3 men I barely knew, their hands finding places that belonged to my husband. The taste of barbecue sauce still lingered on my tongue, mixed with shame and something else I couldn't name. "Morning, beautiful." David appeared in the doorway with 2 mugs. "How was the cookout?" I pulled the covers up to my chin. "Fine, nothing special." He set my coffee on the nightstand and kissed my forehead. His lips felt foreign against my skin, like I'd forgotten the shape of his affection overnight. "Wish I'd gone with you. Maybe next time." "Maybe." The word came out hollow. David picked up his camera from the dresser, checking the memory card. He'd been documenting everything lately, our walks, dinners, quiet moments, building some kind of archive of our happiness. "I thought I'd take some shots at the farmer's market today," he said, adjusting the lens. "Want to come?" I shook my head, not trusting my voice. How could I sit beside him in the car, pretend everything was normal, when I could still feel phantom touches on my skin? "You okay? You seem distant." "Just tired." Another lie to add to the collection I was building. After he left, I stood in the shower until the water ran cold, scrubbing at my skin like I could wash away the memory of hands that weren't his. The grocery store felt like a minefield. Every aisle held the possibility of running into one of them. Marcus, the 23-year-old with gentle hands, Garrett at 35 who'd moved my hair aside, or Frank, 60 and steady, who'd held my waist like he had every right. I grabbed a cart and tried to focus on my list. Milk, bread, something for dinner that David would actually eat. Normal things. Wife things. "Emily." I turned, my heart hammering. Marcus stood by the produce section, holding a bag of apples. His dark hair was messy, like he'd just rolled out of bed, and his eyes searched my face. "How are you?" he asked quietly. "I'm good. Fine." I gripped the cart handle until my knuckles went white. "You?" "Been thinking about the evening." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "About what we shared." "Nothing happened." The words came out too sharp, too fast. He smiled, slow and knowing. "Right. Nothing." A woman pushed past us, muttering about people blocking the aisle. The interruption gave me an excuse to move, to put distance from him and the weight of his gaze. "Emily, wait." But I was already walking away, my cartwheels squeaking against the linoleum. In the parking lot, I sat in my car for 10 minutes, hands shaking as I tried to process the encounter. He wasn't ashamed. If anything, he seemed pleased, like we shared some delicious secret. The realization made my chest tight with panic. What if they all felt that way? What if they thought the evening was just the beginning? David was waiting when I got home, sitting at the kitchen table with an envelope in his hands. The return address made my blood freeze. Our marriage counselor's office, the one we'd seen twice before deciding we didn't need help. "This came today," he said, holding up the letter. "The counselor's office. Says we missed our appointment." "What appointment?" But even as I asked, I remembered. I'd scheduled it weeks ago, back when our biggest problem was David working too much and me feeling neglected. "You made an appointment and didn't tell me?" David's tone was careful, controlled. "Why?" I set the groceries on the counter, buying time. "I thought we might need to talk to someone. About our relationship." "About our relationship." He repeated the words like they were foreign. "What's wrong that you can't tell me yourself?" The letter sat there like evidence of my guilt. I'd made that appointment when I felt distant from him, when I thought our marriage was drifting into comfortable silence. Now it felt like prophecy. "Nothing's wrong," I said. "I just thought it might help." "Help with what?" He stood, moving closer. "You've been acting strange since yesterday. Distant. Won't look me in the eye." I busied myself unpacking groceries, avoiding his gaze. I'm fine. Are you? His hand touched my shoulder, gentle but insistent. Because you feel like a stranger right now. The words hit like a physical blow. Stranger. If only he knew how accurate that was, how I'd become a stranger to myself in one evening, in one moment of weakness that changed everything. Maybe we should keep the appointment, I whispered. Did something happen at that cookout? David's question hung in the air as we sat across from each other at dinner. He'd made pasta, my favorite, but I could barely manage a few bites. What do you mean? I asked, though my heart already knew where this was heading. You're different. He set down his fork, giving me his full attention. Yesterday morning you were excited about going. Complained I wasn't coming with you. Now you act like it was torture. I pushed food around my plate, creating small mountains of penny. It wasn't torture, just boring. So boring it changed your entire personality? The accusation in David's tone made me look up. His eyes were steady, searching, and I saw something there I'd never seen before. Suspicion. I don't know what you want me to say. The truth would be nice. He leaned back in his chair. Who was there? Neighbors, the usual people. Which neighbors? My mouth went dry. Marcus from down the street, Garrett and his wife, Frank from the corner house, others. Garrett's wife was there? I paused, fork halfway to my mouth. No, actually, she was visiting her sister. So Garrett was alone. I guess. The trap was closing around me, each question tightening the noose. And Marcus is single, right? Frank's been divorced for what, 2 years? I set down my fork, no longer pretending to eat. What are you getting at, David? I'm trying to understand why my wife went to a party full of single men and came home acting like she'd committed a crime. The word crime hit me like a slap. I didn't do anything wrong. Then why won't you look at me when you say that? I know something happened. David's words shattered the fragile peace we'd been maintaining for the past hour. We'd moved to the living room after dinner, him reading while I pretended to watch TV. But the tension had been building like pressure in a kettle. David, please. Please what? He closed his book, the sound sharp in the quiet room. Please stop asking questions. Please pretend my wife didn't come home from a party acting like a completely different person. I pulled a throw pillow against my chest, armor against what was coming. You're being paranoid. Am I? He reached for something on the side table, his camera, the one he'd been carrying around like a talisman. I was looking through these today. Pictures from recent weeks, recent months. You know what I noticed? My throat closed. What? How happy you look. How you used to look at me. He scrolled through images on the small screen. And then I compare that to how you've been since yesterday, and I have to ask myself, what changed? The camera felt like a weapon pointed at me, capturing evidence of my before and after. The woman who'd been faithful, and the one who'd thrown it all away for a moment of feeling desired by strangers. Nothing changed, but my voice cracked on the lie. Emily. He set the camera aside and moved closer. I've known you for 7 years. Married you for 4. I know when you're lying. The walls were closing in. Every breath felt labored, like the air had turned thick. I don't know what you want me to say. I want you to tell me what really took place at that cookout. I told you. Nothing. Then why are you crying? I touched my face, surprised to find tears there. When had I started crying? I can't do this, I whispered. Can't do what? This. Our marriage. Pretending everything's fine when it's not. The words hung there like a confession. I kissed them. The words fell out of me like stones, each one hitting the floor with a weight I couldn't take back. David sat frozen across from me, his face cycling through emotions I couldn't read. Them? 3 of them. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold. Marcus, Garrett, Frank, at the cookout. The silence stretched, filled with the sound of our old life cracking apart. David's hands lay flat on his knees, knuckles white. All three? His tone was barely a whisper. Not at once, one after another. It just happened. Even as I said it, I knew how hollow it sounded. Things like that don't just happen. Choices get made. How does that just happen, Emily? I couldn't answer because I didn't know. One moment I was holding a plate of food. The next I was letting strangers touch me in ways that belonged to him. David stood and walked to the window, his back to me. Was it because I didn't go with you? No. The word came out fierce, desperate. This isn't your fault. This isn't it? He turned around and I saw something broken in his eyes. My wife cheats on me with 3 men, but it has nothing to do with me? I don't know why I did it. The truth felt raw in my throat. I don't know who I am anymore. He picked up the letter from the counselor's office, still sitting on the coffee table where we'd left it. The appointment reminder that had started unraveling everything. Maybe we should keep this appointment after all, he said quietly. David, I need time to think. He folded the letter carefully, precisely. I'm going to stay at my brother's tonight. Please don't go. But he was already moving toward the bedroom, toward the suitcase that would carry him out of our life as we knew it. I sat in the living room listening to him pack, each sound another nail in the coffin of who we used to be. When the door closed behind him, I was alone with the consequences of one evening's choices, and the woman I'd become in the aftermath of wanting to feel desired by someone other than the man who'd loved me faithfully for 7 years. The house felt enormous without David's presence. Every creak of the floorboards echoed like accusations. Every shadow held the memory of what I'd confessed. I wandered from room to room, touching surfaces he'd touched, sitting in chairs where he'd sat, trying to understand how 7 years could fracture in a single conversation. His coffee mug still sat in the sink, unwashed. The book he'd been reading lay open on his nightstand, bookmark holding his place in a life we might never return to. I closed it gently, as if preserving something sacred. The phone rang twice that evening. Both times I let it go to voicemail, afraid it might be one of them. Marcus with his knowing smile, Garrett with his quiet intensity, or Frank with his steady hands. The thought of their voices in my sanctuary made my skin crawl. By midnight, I was sitting on our bedroom floor in David's old college t-shirt, staring at the space where his suitcase used to live. The closet looked wounded, missing pieces of itself. Missing him. I'd destroyed everything for what? A moment of feeling wanted by strangers? The shame tasted bitter in my mouth, mixing with the salt of tears I hadn't realized I was crying. What kind of person throws away a faithful husband for the fleeting touch of men she barely knew? The doorbell rang at 10 in the morning, jarring me awake on the couch where I'd finally fallen asleep around dawn. Through the peephole, I saw Marcus standing on my porch, hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. I pressed my back against the door, heart hammering. Maybe if I stayed quiet, he'd leave. But he rang again, longer this time, and called my name. Emily, I know you're in there. Your car's in the driveway. Reluctantly, I opened the door but kept the chain engaged. What do you want? To talk. He looked different in daylight, younger somehow, less sure of himself. About what took place. There's nothing to talk about. Your husband left. It wasn't a question. Marcus had probably seen David loading his car yesterday, witnessed the evidence of my marriage cracking apart. Word travels fast in a neighborhood this small. The casual way he said it made my stomach turn. That's none of your business. Actually, it kind of is. He stepped closer to the door. We're all in this together now, whether we like it or not. We're not in anything together. Emily. His tone dropped, became almost gentle. I saw him taking pictures yesterday morning. Before you came to the store, he was documenting something. The neighborhood, the houses, including mine. The device he'd been carrying suddenly took on new meaning. David's recent obsession with capturing everything, building his archive of our happiness, Had it extended beyond our relationship? Had he been suspicious longer than I'd realized? What are you saying? I'm saying maybe your husband knew something was going to happen before it did. David came back that afternoon while Marcus was still on my porch. I watched through the window as my husband pulled into the driveway, saw him notice the younger man standing at our door, watched his face harden into something I'd never seen before. You should go, I whispered to Marcus through the chain. This conversation isn't over, but he was already walking away, nodding to David as they passed on the walkway. The politeness of it made everything worse. Two men acknowledging each other while the wreckage of my choices lay there. David unlocked the door without knocking, his key still working in the life we'd built together. He looked exhausted, older than his 30 years, wearing the same clothes from yesterday. "Friend of yours?" he asked, setting his keys on the hall table. "He just stopped by." "To check on you? How thoughtful." The sarcasm in David's tone was new, sharp-edged. Was he one of them? I nodded, unable to speak. David walked to the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, closed it again. Normal motions in an abnormal situation. "I've been thinking all night," he said finally, "about our marriage, about what you told me. And I called the counselor's office, moved our appointment to today, 4 o'clock. He turned to face me. "You're going to tell her everything, every detail. And then we're going to figure out if there's anything left to save." The ultimatum hung there like a bridge I wasn't sure I could cross. What if there isn't? Then at least we'll know. The counselor's office smelled like vanilla and disappointment. I sat in the same chair I'd occupied months ago when our biggest problem was David working late, back when infidelity was something that happened to other people. "So," she said, consulting the paper in her hands, "you've had some significant developments since we last spoke." David sat across from me, close enough to touch, but feeling miles away. We'd driven here in silence, the radio filling space that used to hold easy conversation. "Emily cheated on me," David said bluntly. "With 3 men, at a neighborhood party." The counselor's expression didn't change. Professional neutrality in the face of human wreckage. "Emily, would you like to share your perspective?" The words came slowly, painfully. I told her about feeling invisible in my marriage, about David's long hours and my loneliness, about going to the cookout alone and the attention that felt like sunlight after months in shadow. "But that doesn't excuse what I did," I finished. "Nothing excuses it." "David, how are you processing this information? I keep wondering what I missed." David's tone was quiet, controlled. "Were there signs? Was she unhappy for longer than I realized? Did I push her toward this somehow?" "You didn't push me anywhere," I said quickly. "This was my choice. My terrible, selfish choice." The counselor leaned forward. "Emily, you mentioned feeling invisible. Can you explore that feeling?" The session stretched on, each question peeling back another layer of the life we'd built. By the end, we were both crying, not together, but separately, mourning different losses in the same room. The photos appeared in David's email that evening, security footage from a neighbor's doorbell, showing me on Marcus's porch that morning, the chain visible even in the grainy image. The timestamp read 10:17 a.m., proof of continued contact after my confession. "You lied to me," David said, laptop screen turned toward me like an accusation. "Again." "He came to me. I didn't invite him." "But you talked to him. After everything we discussed in therapy today, you stood on our porch and had a conversation with one of the men you cheated with." The evidence was undeniable, captured in digital clarity. I looked guilty because I was guilty, not of seeking Marcus out, but of existing in a world where my choices had consequences that kept rippling outward. "What did he want?" David asked. I thought about Marcus's words, his suggestion that David had been taking pictures before the cookout, documenting the neighborhood like he'd suspected something. But sharing that would only make things worse. To talk about what took place. "And what did you tell him?" "That there was nothing to talk about, David studied the screen, zooming in on the image. You look like you're listening pretty intently for someone who had nothing to say. He was right. In the photo, I was leaning forward slightly, engaged despite my claims otherwise. Body language doesn't lie the way words do. I don't know how to fix this, I whispered. Neither do I. 3 weeks later, we sat in the counselor's office again, but everything had changed. David had moved back home, but into the guest room. We ate meals together, shared morning coffee, existed in the same space like polite strangers rebuilding from rubble. The work you've both done has been significant, she said, reviewing her notes from our sessions. Emily, you've been honest about your motivations and the impact of your choices. David, you've processed your anger and begun to separate Emily's actions from your own self-worth. The official language made our pain sound clinical, manageable, but I knew better. Some wounds leave scars that never fully fade. Where do we go from here? David asked. That depends on what you both want, she replied. Emily, you've expressed genuine remorse and commitment to rebuilding trust. David, you've indicated willingness to try, but with clear boundaries. The boundaries were extensive. No contact with any of the 3 neighbors. Complete transparency about whereabouts and communications. Individual therapy in addition to couples work. A trial separation if either of us felt overwhelmed. It's not the marriage we had before, David said as we walked to the car afterward. No, I agreed. It's not. But maybe it can be something else, something more honest. I looked at him across the parking lot. This man who'd chosen to fight for our relationship, despite having every reason to walk away. The afternoon sun caught the silver in his hair I'd never noticed before, evidence of the stress I'd caused him. I love you, I said. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know. I know, he replied. That's why I'm still here. We drove home separately, another new boundary, but toward the same destination. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a beginning, built on the ruins of who we used to be. The house felt different when we both walked through the front door 20 minutes apart. The familiar spaces seemed to hold their breath, waiting to see what version of us would emerge from this wreckage. I set my keys on the kitchen counter with deliberate care, the small clink echoing louder than it should have. Marcus appeared in the doorway, loosening his tie. We moved around each other like dancers learning new choreography, careful not to brush against the tender places where trust used to live. He poured himself a glass of water. I opened the refrigerator and stared at its contents without seeing anything. I should probably stay in the guest room, he said quietly, for now. The words landed like stones in still water, sending ripples through what little hope I'd been carrying. But I nodded. That makes sense. He paused at the base of the stairs. Sarah, what you did? It doesn't just disappear because we're trying to work through it. I know. And I can't promise I'll ever fully trust you the way I did before. The honesty cut clean through me. I know that too. He climbed the stairs, each footstep a small goodbye to the life we'd shared. I remained in the kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of our ordinary Tuesday. His coffee mug still in the sink, my reading glasses on the counter, the grocery list we'd written together that morning in another lifetime. That night, I lay in our bed alone, staring at the ceiling where shadows from passing headlights traced temporary patterns. Down the hall, I could hear Marcus moving around, the creak of unfamiliar floorboards under his weight. We were both awake in the same house, learning how to be strangers again. The following weeks became an exercise in careful coexistence. We developed new rhythms. He showered first. I made coffee while he dressed. We spoke about practical things, bills, schedules, the leaky faucet in the bathroom. The deeper conversations happened in fragments, scattered across days like pieces of a puzzle we weren't sure we wanted to complete. Some evenings, we'd find ourselves in the living room together, reading or watching television with a careful distance between us on the couch. The space felt vast and charged, full of things we weren't ready to say, but we stayed there anyway, learning how to exist in the same room without the easy intimacy that had once defined us. 3 weeks in, Marcus found me crying over a broken dish. Nothing special, just a plain white plate that slipped from my hands while I was washing up. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, then quietly helped me sweep up the pieces. "It's not about the plate," I said, wiping my eyes with the back of my hand. "I know," he replied, and for the first time since that afternoon in the parking lot, his voice carried something softer than resignation. We were still broken, both of us. But maybe that was where we needed to start, not with who we used to be, but with who we might become in the careful space between forgiveness and letting go.